In this session, we're going to start with Module 1 with an introduction to programming. Our first lesson, we're going to be setting up the IDE, working with the IDE, an introduction to programming, working with C#, data types, and operators. What we need is a programming IDE. This one we're going to be using is Visual Studio 2015. You can get a hold of the Community Edition, which is free for you to be able to get a hold of. What it'll have is the .NET framework that's required to program with C#. So the first thing we have to do, once you've installed Visual Studio, is start up a project, find a place for it to go, and work from there. So let's start a new project, and just spoilers, we'll be working with Monogame later. On the left hand side we have Visual C#. I want to start with the console application first, just because it gives us a nice blank template for us to work from. So in console application, we have down the bottom we have three different things. We have a solution name and a name of the project. So a solution name is a container of all of our different projects, and the name is the name of the current project. I'm going to find a place in my documents. Just a second. I'm going to put that into, let's think. Let's create a new folder, and we'll call this one Video Tutorials, because that's what we're looking at right now. Oh, actually, I've already got one. There we go. I've already got one. This one will be Module 1, and I'm going to keep all of my things in Module 1. So this will be Module 1. That'll be the solution name, and then the name of the project. This will be Lesson 1. So we have Module 1 solution name and Lesson 1 project name. Let's have a look at what happens when I start up this console application. Let's press OK. Let's create the project now. Okay, so we have our project started. On here we have our C# class, which is the program class which we're going to be looking at. I want to draw your attention over to the right hand side here, the Solution Explorer, and here is the solution, Module 1, and the project, Lesson 1, which we're going to be looking at. Right, so let's just do some very simple introduction to programming. We have a few things here. We have these frameworks, or using directives, or whatever they're called. These all contain lots of different methods, but I'm going to cover all of that later on when we actually do some games programming. This is the namespace. So this namespace is the folder location of the project. There it is on the right hand side. This next one here is the name of the class. Now in lesson, hang on, let me just double check that. In lesson 3, we'll be looking at classes in more detail. But all you need to know for now is everything that we put inside this bracket and this bracket belongs to this class. This particular main program, this one here, this main method, I should say, this will allow the program, the console application to run. Main will create that console window and allow us to manipulate and do whatever we want. We'll see that in action. So, the first thing we want to see is what are data types. There are a selection of different types of data types, but essentially they are containers. So they'll look, imagine this. I'm going to use the pen for this one. Imagine you've got box, and in this box we're going to give it a type of box that it is. In this case, I'm going to call this, give this one an integer type, and I'll talk about different types in a second. And in this container, it also needs a name. I'll give it a name called A. Inside there, we can save a value. So this A is going to be a little container that's going to hold that number 5. Let's see how that looks in programming. I've just got to exit out of here. Come on. And let's discard that for now. So I'm going to create an integer called A. And I'm going to say that it equals 5, because that's what I did on the slide, so it equals 5. There are lots of other different types of data types. The ones that you need to know to start off with are an integer is used to represent, it says here, a 32-bit signed integer. So we're going to, just for now, say that integer represents a whole number. If you want to include a set of words, you would use a string. There we go. So that's saving the word hello into that string B, and a boolean, which is used for true and false. We'll have one more that I always like to demonstrate in class, particularly for games, because you won't always need to have a whole number. So let's put in float, and we'll use 0.5. A float, or a double, can be used for a decimal number. Now imagine if you have a game where it is it's a shooting game. You'll never need half of a bullet. So whenever you're using bullets, you would use an integer. If you are maybe doing a percentage of 1, so maybe it's a health bar, you could have 0.5 of a health bar. So these variables, what we can do is we can manipulate these. Let's go into back to the top here, and this time I'm going to call in that variable. So let's talk through this just very quickly again. I have an integer called A, and it equals 5. Then I say A equals 10. So I've now replaced that 5 with the number 10. Doesn't add 10 to it, it replaces it. What I would like to type out for you now is how we can just print some things onto the screen. Up the top here we have a start button. If I press start, the program's going to run, but it's not going to actually do anything. So its build's just started, and it's loading, still loading, and then it's going to flash for a second, and then it's going to go straight off. Oh, here we go. The program's running now, and it's on, and it's closed. Okay, that's fine. It's supposed to do that. With programming, particularly in a procedural programming kind of layout, programming runs in a line. So after I create that integer, I'm going to type out the following: console.writeLine. And using this, I can print out strings. So a string looks like this. And when I run it, it'll close again, because the program reads out and then finishes. So what I often tell my students to do is just add at the very end of your program console.readline. And it's come up saying I am a string. That's printed out there. Fine. So this here is a string. I'm going to talk about what console.writeline, what these brackets are, why we use semicolons there, etc. in a later lesson. But for now, we're just looking at different data types. How do we type out programming? What if I type in string b equals hello, and put a comma in, and then I'm going to replace all of that with b. Console.writeline must have a string in there. It requires a string. What happens if I put an integer in? Actually, it's happy with an integer. I'll come back to that in just a second. So I put that string in there. I press B. I put B in there, which is this variable here, and I press start, and it should say not I am a string, but hello. So it says hello. That's excellent. Hello there. Right. Okay, that's fine. Let's replace that with A and run the program. It says 5. Well, hold on. Why does it say 5 if you've replaced that number 5 with 10? It's because it's in order. So let's do this again, but this time underneath the 10. So we'll do console dot write line. Write and write line. Write will just write next to it. Write line will put it on a new line. So this time I'm writing A, and then still writing A, but after it gets changed. So let's run the program and see what happens now. It goes 5, 10. Excellent. That's fine. That's simple enough. So let's just recap what we have covered so far. We have integers, we have strings, we have console.writeline method, we have overwriting integers or any variable there, and printing it out using console.writeline, and then that is it. This is just used so that the program pauses until we press any key or press enter. It's fine, just ignore that for now. Okay, so what if I wanted to print out two things at once? So we have these things called operators. These symbols will be very, very familiar. Add, subtract, divide, and multiply. We're going to look at those. In programming, depending on the context used, a plus sign doesn't mean add, but often means and. Excuse me. So if I type in console.writeline A and B, let's see what happens. 5, hello, 10. Let's put a break in between the number and the string. A space. So A is reading out 5, and then there is no space, and then adding B. How we do that is we add an empty string. Now that's not really empty. That's empty. That's got a space in, and we can add words, etc. Let's run that now, and it should have 5 hello. Okay. Can we overwrite strings just like we did before? Yes, we can. B equals hello. Yeah, hello. Hello world. That should do. And we do A and B again, and run the program. I didn't put a space in, but you get the point. That should be easy to understand. Let's break down what we have so far. We have an integer called A, we'll save in 5. We have a string B, and we save in the word hello. Then we run a method called console.writeLine a plus blank space plus b, and then we replace the variables like so, and then we run that line of code there. It's good practice while you are studying programming to add comments in. So if you use 2 slashes, it has some text that goes green, and let's add some instructions or some descriptions about what's going on. This creates a variable integer called a, and so on. You can just keep adding. This creates blah de blah de blah. Use that to describe your code and describe what's going on in the scene. So these operators, I'm going to talk about one thing at a time. First of all, we have, I tell you what, let's do the equal sign, because that's already there. So, the equal sign often means is. A single equal sign is. So, or has. So, A is 10. Or 11, because I don't want to be the same. B is 12. Oh, no, so what happens? I can't actually put an integer inside a string. Can't just do that. Just don't try to catch you out there. Obviously, you're not responding because this is a video that you're watching, but never mind. Okay, so we're seeing that it gets saved into here. We're using this to say is. What about adding values together? I'm going to just print out that again. I'm going to copy and paste. Don't copy and paste yourselves. It's bad practice. It's not bad practice, but as an introduction to programming, the more you program, the more you type, the better it'll be as a learning experience for you. So the next thing, let's have, let's try A is 11 and 12. And we could do that the same with words. B is hello, I'll put a space in there as well, and world. And then let's print that out again. Okay, let's run that program and see what happens. So we have that A becoming 11 there, and then B becoming Yari there, and printing those out. So that was just that example I was just talking about. A is now, after that line, 23, and B is hello world. Excellent. That is just what we needed. So notice that by putting and, in this case, it is adding them together. But it's not really adding, it's saying that A is 11 and 12, which adds up to 23. B is hello world and hello world. B is hello and world. Okay, so here's another one. I already have an integer called A, and I already have a string called B. So we'll start, think with a clear head. I'm going to have an integer called num1. We'll just have that short for number 1. And I'm going to put in there number 10. And then put in here number 2 equals 20. And what are we going to do with them? We're going to add those two together. So before we added just two numbers together. This time I want to add up the two variable names together. So let's see how that would look. There are different ways to do it. I'll show you a simple understanding first. We've got a third integer, let's call this one answer, and I'm going to leave it empty for now. Then I'm going to say that answer equals num1 plus num2. So the thing with this one is, we are taking two variables, adding them together, and producing a result. Let's see how that looks. Console.writeLine. Let's write out just the answer. Run the program and it should now say 30. Perfect, it does. The very last line on the bottom there says 30. Next. So that adds two numbers together. We could add numbers in a different way. We could say that num1 is num1 plus num2. So this one, we're saying that num1, which is 10, is now 10 plus 20. Run the program. Actually, let's not run the program because I didn't tell her to write that out. This time I'll not write out answer, I'm going to write out num1. And run the program. It should say 30 again. Yep, good. Simple enough. Okay. There's another way I'd like to see. Actually, before I do, I'm going to just copy that same line and run it again. So 10 is 10 plus 20. So this now becomes 30. Let's write out 30. Now that this is 30, we're going to say that this number is now 30 plus 20, so it should say 50, and print that out. Yes, perfect. Right, one more thing. That can be quite cumbersome to write out, so that will be num1, and a quicker way to do it, num1 is the same as num1 and num2. So using this and an equals sign, we are covering num1 plus equals num2. This means that num1 is num2 and itself. And that should print out again. Just get rid of that line. Just being lazy. That should now say, what's it going to say? 70? 70? 50 plus 20? 70? Yep. Excellent. That's printing out 70 now. Done. Okay. So that is adding. What about dividing and subtracting and blah blah blah? Looking at the presentation, we've already covered and plus equals. Minus equals is going to be very obvious in a second. Num1 minus equals. I'll do probably equals num1 minus num2, and then print out that line again. Okay, so now it's minus that 20 from there. I'm now going to write that as shorthand. Okay, should be the same result. Done. Next, let's do multiply and divide. Num1, I could do exactly the same. Num1 multiplied by, that's shift and 8, so that star symbol means multiply. Multiply by num2, done, and that will give us another result. There we go. And then let's divide it. And to divide, num1 equals num1 divided by num2. Is that going to work, or is it going to freak out? Should be fine. Okay. Oh, no, didn't print it out again. Okay, there you go, it divided it. It's gone back to the same number. Once again, you can write these as shorthand. I prefer to, but you might just prefer to do it longhand because it's easier to wrap your head around how that works. I wasn't using answer again there, but that's fine. So putting some very simple maths together like that. So what have we covered now? We've covered different data types, signed and unsigned. For that one, I'll set there as a task at the end of the session. So we've set up the IDE, we've done an introduction to programming, we've been working with C#, we've done data types, and we've done some operators. The next one is these three signs, and I'd rather look at them later in a different session. But I wanted to put them there because I didn't want you to get confused with an equal sign and two equal signs. One equal sign means is, two equal signs means is the same as. Okay. So, task at the end of the session, what I'd like you to do is to research signed and unsigned and tell me the difference between signed and unsigned data types. Good example is looking at an integer, so what is a signed and an unsigned integer. And the next task for you is to create a very simple variable kind of adding, subtracting thing. Basically just practice just what we've done there, adding up values. Okay. Make sure you keep adding comments and just keep practicing with that. So that'll bring that to the end of lesson 1. Thank you for watching. Next session we're going to cover creating methods and passing values.